gather today to mourn the passing and to remember the life of a well-respected man, Brian Kenneth Plowman. Brian was a professional in the field of psychiatry. He was also a family man and a very good friend to many. He was a kind and generous person who took the time to make sure that those in his presence felt accepted, comfortable, and recognized. Brian's sense of humor was unique and sharp, and he was a big fan of the writings of Samuel Clemens, best known as Mark Twain. Now, Mark Twain had an irreverent yet amazing sense of humor, which Brian appreciated and admired. The following are quotes from Mark Twain that Brian loved and often repeated. First one, buy land. They're not making it anymore. I am an old man and have known a great many troubles, some of which actually happened. Golf is a good walk spoiled. Denial ain't just a river in Egypt. The best way to cheer yourself up is to cheer someone else up. All generalizations are false, including this one. Let us endeavor to live so that when we die, even the undertaker will be sorry. There are lies, damn lies, and statistics. The more things are forbidden, the more popular they become. Familiarity breeds contempt and children. The human race has only one really effective weapon, and that is laughter. And the last one, I do not fear death. I had been dead for billions and billions of years before I was born and had not suffered the slightest inconvenience from it. Another reading as we think of Brian is entitled, Joy Lost and Found. It's difficult to celebrate the passing of a joyful soul. We're all sad because it seems there's one less joyful person in this sometimes sad world. But then it's not so difficult to celebrate such a gift. So many loving children, so many lively grandchildren, so much fun, so many days of laughter, so many radiant moments of glorious sunshine. Joyful spirits just spread it around. Their laughter is as catching as a bad cold, but a lot more fun. Their generosity knows no bounds. Their hearts beat out the music of love. And it's a great song that goes on playing long after the dust has settled. So that when we sit back and look at the legacy of love and all those gifts that came from a warm heart and loving soul, we have to admit nothing is lost. The laughter is still there. It flows through us all, and that optimism, that happiness would always be his wish. And so we honor him today with joy in our hearts. It's my honor to be been asked to participate in this memorial service and celebration for the life of Brian Plowman. In a moment such as this, we're reminded of the depth of human connection and the bonds that tie us together, even in the face of parting. As we gather today to say our final goodbyes, we find ourselves at the intersection of both grief and gratitude. Grief for the loss of a loved one, and gratitude for the time and memories we were fortunate enough to share with him. We gather as a community of family and friends to remember and bid a sad but fond farewell to Brian, to seek comfort and healing in our grief, and to care for one another. There are no words to express the feelings that surround each person here. Sadness for ourselves because this amazing man is no longer here to share his life with us and to inspire us. And yet gratefulness that his life of inspiration was part of this earth for 78 years, to guide, to teach, and to love. Today we come to grieve Brian's passing and also to celebrate his life. This is a sacred and special moment where we can let tears flow and let laughter heal, where we can share stories and begin the journey of sharing those stories and turning them into memories. Someone once wrote, a person lives for as long as they are carried in the hearts of others, and what the heart has once known, it will never forget. Brian's family will never forget how he cared for them, how he loved them. The comfort of having a spouse, father, father-in-law, grandfather, and friend like Brian may indeed be lost. But the comfort of having had him in your life is never lost. To match the grief of losing Brian, you have the joy of having known him, a joy of which you become especially aware at this moment as you fix his image in your mind and recall the personal qualities that made him unique. Each of you here today has made a contribution to Brian's life in your own individual way. And when he slipped away, I'm sure he felt loved and supported by everyone. Brian is now at peace, and I believe he would expect his family to also be at peace, knowing they always gave their best down through the years. Let's take a moment now to bow our heads in quietness as we remember Brian this afternoon. We're gathered here today not only to grieve the loss of Brian, but to also give thanks for the joy he brought to each one, for his love for his family and friends, and for how full life was when he was with us. We've gathered here today not only to consider the shortness and uncertainty of life, but also to give thanks for the gift of life and the gift of family and the gift of friendships. We've gathered today to comfort one another as we share our love and our memories. In this sharing today, may we remember Brian with joy and may we feel comforted. Let's continue in quiet reflection as we listen to a song by Ricky Nelson entitled Garden Party.
To a garden party, reminisce with my old friends, a chance to share old memories, play songs again. When I got to the garden party, they all knew my name, but no one recognized me. I didn't look the same, but it's all right now. I learned my lesson well. See, you can't please everyone, so you got to please yourself. People came from miles around, everyone was there. Yoko brought walrus, there was magic in the air. Over in the corner, much to my surprise, Mr. Hughes hidden Dylan's shoes, wearing his disguise. But it's all right now. I learned my lesson well. See, you can't please everyone, so you got to please yourself. La 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 la, la la la. Played them all the old songs, thought that's why they came. No one heard the music, we didn't look the same. I said hello to Mary Lou, she belongs to me, and sang a song by honky tonk. It was time to leave, but it's all right now. I learned my lesson well. You see, you can't please everyone, so you got to please yourself. La da da, la da da, la da da. Someone opened up the closet door, and out stepped Johnny B. Good, playing guitar like a ring in a bell, looking like he should. If you gotta play garden parties, I wish you a lot of luck. But if memories were all I sang, I'd rather drive a truck. But it's all right now. I learned my lesson well. You see, you can't please everyone, so you got to please yourself. La da da, la da da da. And it's all right now. Learned my lesson well. See, you can't please everyone, so you got to please yourself.
Today we will hear a eulogy as Brian's daughter-in-law, Chantal Plowman, comes to share some of his history and how he impacted so many lives.
Thanks. I went with the flower in the hair because it's a celebration of life, and we've got a little bit of a Hawaiian motif because Brian loved Hawaii. And I hope I can channel Brian to get through this. Well, I don't want to get through this. I want to really celebrate Brian and share with you some of his history and stories. And I hope I will portray the amazing person that he was, and hope you can relate this to your own experience of Brian. You may have heard the often quoted Jerry Seinfeld joke, according to most studies, people's number one fear is public speaking. Number two is death. So in which case, Brian is in a better position than I am. But that wouldn't be true for Brian, because Brian was a great public speaker. I only heard him give a speech at our wedding, but he used to give a formal speech every year in Hawaii when he and Alice attended their annual psychiatry conference called Creativity and Madness. I'm sorry I never heard him speak. And even though Alice attended that conference for many years with Brian, she never heard him speak either. She was so anxious for Brian to have to get up and speak that she didn't even want to be in the audience. So I can only imagine, Alice, about how you feel about me speaking here today. I will try my best to put you at ease and not say anything cringeworthy, but I can't make any promises. And I will do my best to make this tribute to Brian funny and heartwarming, because that's who Brian was. And I can't guarantee that there won't be some tears, but I know Brian wouldn't want anyone here today to be uncomfortable in any way, and would want to make all of you laugh and have a good time. Not exactly an easy request, Brian, considering this is a funeral, but I will give it a try. Brian loved to connect with people. He often did this by joking with them. So I'll sprinkle in this eulogy some of Brian's many standard jokes that my sister-in-law Karen often referred to as Brianisms. Karen even thought about writing a book compiled of Brianisms because he had so many. I think that tells you a lot about who Brian was as a person. Making people laugh and be happy was a guiding force in his life. So I will not be backward about being forward, which is a popular Brianism, and get to the meat and potatoes of who Brian was. On November 3rd, 1945, Brian was born in Rivers, Manitoba, and soon after moved to Brandon, Manitoba, and later Kamsack, Saskatchewan. From a young age, Brian did his best to make his family happy. I always feel that people from the prairies are the salt of the earth, and that was Brian. There was no pretension with him. He was raised on values of hard work, honesty, family, community. He greatly admired his father, George Plowman, and he did a lot to help his mother, Loretta, by taking many responsibilities at home and working from a young age. He had an older brother, George, they called Georgie, and was a kind and protective big brother to his little sister, Bev. When Brian was a young teenager, he would often spend the summers with extended family in Prince Edward Island, working on the farm, so his work ethic was ingrained at an early age. And he learned many practical skills from his upbringing. Plus, he was very mechanically minded, so he was naturally handy, which, sidebar, was very fortunate for Kevin and I, because whenever Brian and Alice would come to visit, we would have a list of jobs that needed to be done. And Brian and Alice seemed delighted to help us hang pictures or assemble furniture. Brian and I even assembled a big metal gazebo on our back patio, and Brian was the mastermind and I was the assistant. Anyway, I digress. Brian moved to Winnipeg as a teenager, and it was a good thing he did, because it changed the trajectory of his life. That is where, at 18, he met Alice, who was then 16 and would become the love of his life. That line from the movie Jerry Maguire, "You Complete Me," was made for Alice and Brian. It's hard to think of Brian without Alice. They were together for 60 years and had the most amazing symbiotic relationship. I was always astounded that they played solitaire together. Or that Brian would read books out loud to Alice. Brian and Alice's love story is at the center of who Brian was as a person. It was evident in how they lived their lives and in all their actions. I even remember Brian telling me that when Alice was pregnant, he sewed maternity clothes for her. When I was fact-checking this with Alice, she said he actually helped her make the clothes, but close enough. but I'm skipping ahead in the narrative of Brian's life. So, spoiler alert, Alice gets pregnant. So yes, Brian met Alice on her way to go roller skating. He liked to say that he and his buddy picked up Alice and her friend when they were hitchhiking. But again, Alice corrected the story, saying she was just changing buses on her way to the roller rink, and her friend knew Brian's buddy, so they went there together. Alice said that neither her or Brian were that great at roller skating, but a good thing it wasn't a deal breaker for their relationship to blossom. And only a couple of years after meeting Brian and Alice got married and had Kevin, and 2 years later Karen, creating the perfect nuclear family of a boy and a girl 2 years apart, which incidentally was what Kevin wanted for himself and was exactly what he got. Anyway, Brian and Alice started their family. Brian worked at the CN Railway in Transcona as a machinist, and he and Alice built their nest with Kevin and Karen. But Brian was a very intelligent man, and incidentally, he had an exceptionally large head. He often had a hard time finding hats. And he told me that there's a correlation between the size of your head and your brain, and correspondingly your intelligence. So Brian can thank his big head for the ability to have embarked on a long academic journey while still working and raising a young family to eventually become a psychiatrist. Brian's story was actually one of the first things that impressed me about Kevin. I think Kevin told me about his dad on our second date. Kevin explained that when he was just a toddler, his dad had gone back to school to get his high school credits and then did 2 years of university before being admitted into medical school, which he completed when Kevin was 8 and Karen was 6. When Brian had finally completed his psychiatry specialty and residency, Kevin was 13 and Karen was 11. So for most of Karen and Kevin's childhood, Brian was a full-time student in an exceptionally challenging program and working and raising a family. After Brian graduated, he excelled as a psychiatrist and practiced for 45 years. So when Kevin told me his dad's story, I thought, ooh, if Brian could do all that, his offspring can't be half bad. And the counterpart to that story is what Alice did to facilitate Brian being in school for all those years and developing his professional expertise. They say that behind every great man is an even greater woman. Or I'm not sure that's actually right, but it sounds right to me. Alice created a beautiful home for her family with almost no money. She worked wonders on a tight budget, and she motivated Brian to make the best of himself. Brian might not have developed as fabulous a person without Alice. You can see the theme in Brian's life. He and Alice were two peas in a pod. They are like peanut butter and jelly, pretty good together, but amazing together. Pretty good separately, but amazing together. And for all those years that Brian was in school, he and Alice took Kevin and Karen every summer on holidays. Brian would work for part of the summer at the railway to make money for school and living expenses, but somehow, on a shoestring, the family camped their way across America. They had a car and a trailer and ventured out together as a family. And they visited nearly every state in the US. I think there's only 4 that they missed. And another sidebar, when we were in the hospital with Brian in those last days, I was talking to him and I said, Brian, how did you and Alice ever do that, camping with the kids like that? Because when our family went on a 8-day road trip across the northern states, I was so exhausted from the kids fighting in the back of the car. I could barely make it from the car to the hotel, to the restaurant and back. Never mind setting up camp and having to make a meal, but maybe it was easier for Brian and Alice than it was for us because bizarrely, Kevin and Karen never fought. And I did fact check that. In fact, they helped set up camp and would often set off to go fishing for dinner or chop wood and gather kindling. Wow. Anyway, back to the timeline. When Brian was finally a practicing psychiatrist, he and Alice had a little more money and moved from their tiny home in Transcona that Alice's dad had built himself and also lived in the basement with them. They bought a lovely home in another part of Transcona and started taking different family holidays. They shifted from campsites across America to annual trips to Hawaii. As I mentioned, Brian had a professional conference there every December, so the family started spending Christmases and New Year's in Hawaii. That created a lifelong love affair that Brian had with Hawaii. And it was on these trips to Hawaii that Brian and Alice met their lifelong friends, Ben and Wiley. Ben is a psychiatrist from Chicago, and their family became the Plowman's Hawaiian family, with all the kids being like cousins who would get together every year. And when that conference ended, Brian and Alice would still go to Hawaii and meet Ben and Wiley, and often did an annual trip to somewhere in the US or Canada, somewhere together for a short vacation. So when Kevin was 13 and Karen was 11, Brian got an opportunity to become the director at Woods Homes in Calgary. So he brought Alice and Kevin, kicking and screaming, and Karen merrily skipping, to a new home in Ranchlands. It took Kevin and Alice a while to warm up to Calgary, but eventually they adjusted while Brian and Karen jumped into Calgary life with both feet. And a sidebar, as we were looking at pictures for today's video tribute, we found a lot of pictures of Karen wearing a cowboy hat, and she explained that she just thought that's what people from Calgary wore, and she adopted it wholeheartedly until she realized she was the only one doing it. In Calgary, Brian thrived. He came out before the family moved, and he used to have dinner at Nick's Steakhouse, and he befriended the owner, Nick Petros, who was a lifelong dear acquaintance. And Brian did that with many people in his life in Calgary and in his travels. And speaking of travels, Brian and Alice did a lot of that. They went on their first big trip across the pond to England in the early 80s, and then to Australia a few years later, and then continued to travel around the world to Europe, Asia, South America, usually on a celebrity cruise ship. They also adopted annual travel routine to California in the fall, Hawaii in the winter, and some special destination in the spring. Brian loved warm weather and walking on the beach. He often talked about wanting to move to Hawaii or California, and might have even entertained that idea of doing that when Kevin and Karen were done school. But everything changed when, at 24 years of age and after being with her partner Bruce for many years, Karen made a big announcement. Spoiler alert, Karen gets pregnant. When Karen announced that she was going to have a baby, that became the focal point of Brian and Alice's life. At that time, Alice was only 44 years old, and when asked to comment on the big news, Alice said, "I'm too young to be a grandma." But she wasn't. And on April 22nd, 1993, Brian and Alice embarked on one of their most joyous ventures of their life together, becoming grandparents to their first grandchild, Brooke Webster. Brooke was the apple of her grandparents' eyes. Karen and Bruce lived with Brian and Alice for a short time when Brooke was a toddler. So Brian and Alice got to enjoy a very special relationship with Brooke. And even after Karen and Bruce's house was complete and they moved, Brian had a deep connection with Brooke. Brian loved to tell the story of Brooke when she was about 5 years old. I hope I get this right, Brooke. I didn't fact check it. And she had come over to their place, and he was talking to her about facing her fears. And then she was helping him outside in the yard, and he was cleaning the gutters of the house, and he had to climb the ladder. And he told Brooke to hold onto the ladder for him and told her that he was afraid of heights. And when he came down, she said, "See, Grandpa, you faced your fear." And he said that he was never afraid of heights after that. So Brooke, maybe you can help me with my fear of heights. And 4 years later, 4 years after Brooke was born, Brian and Alice were graced with their second grandchild, Sierra, who was a little fireball from the start. And not to be outdone, she also became the apple of her grandparents' eyes. My first memory of Sierra was when Kevin and I went to Karen and Bruce's house, and I met the whole family for the first time. Brooke was 6 and Sierra was 2. And Brooke was entertaining us all with a song from school. And Sierra noticed that Brooke had a captive audience and decided that she would not be outdone. She started doing somersaults and flips to entertain us. And she continued to entertain and delight her grandparents her whole life. And another sidebar, when Brian went into the ICU, Sierra needed a letter to be able to travel here from the US. And within 24 hours of Karen getting that letter, she was there. And it was such a breath of fresh air and a sign of hope. And actually, it was a breath of new life coming into the room because, spoiler alert, Sierra is pregnant. Brian and Alice loved being grandparents, but they had they had to wait a long time before they got any more grandchildren. Kevin and I were slow starters. But as I said before, Kevin got to replicate his parents' ideal nuclear family, having his son Nicholas, and then Natasha 2 years later. So even though they had to wait a little longer, Brian and Alice were no less delighted when Nicholas was born. He was the first and only grandson, and Brian and Alice enjoyed Nicholas's sweet nature and obsession with trees and lights. Brian and Alice have always been very energy conscious and would always turn off unnecessary lights. But within seconds of Nicholas coming in their home as a toddler, he discovered where every light switch was on and turned everyone on, with Brian and Alice following in closely on his heels and turning them off behind him. So maybe it's not surprising that Nicholas is studying to be an electrical engineer. But later, when Nicholas started hockey, Brian and Alice would come along to the games along with my parents, and they would cheer heartily, even though they didn't have much interest in hockey. But Nicholas broke them in for enjoying hockey, and they continued with Natasha's hockey, and then were primed for when Sierra became engaged to Michael, who is an NHL hockey player. And I shouldn't say that Brian had no interest in hockey. He actually did play hockey in Camp Sac and was a pretty good goalie in his day. And finally, 2 years later, after Nicholas was born, came Natasha, the final grandchild. Brian loved to joke with Natasha and tease her. And as I said, he and Alice would come and watch her play her hockey games and supported her all her years of playing. And he often said that Natasha looked like Alice. And incidentally, Natasha has often asked me if she's adopted, because she doesn't think she looks like Kevin or I, which I find kind of offensive because she's so pretty. But I think she's probably right. She probably does most resemble Alice, which is a great compliment because Alice is so beautiful. I think of all Brian's achievements in life and professional accolades, the thing that gave him the most pride and joy was his family. And as I said, he was particularly proud of his grandchildren. And of the amazing people that they have grown into. He was proud of you, Brooke, studying science and psychology in university, being a video game developer. I know you guys had deep and intellectual discussions that he enjoyed. And he loved Declan, who we all think is the perfect partner for you. Your grandpa was so happy that you found Declan just as he had found Alice. And he was equally proud of you, Sierra, and the beautiful young woman and thoughtful young woman you have grown into. And also so happy that you found such a wonderful partner in Michael, and who is also as perfect for you as Brian was for Alice. And this next sidebar might make me cry, but when we were in the ICU with Brian's oncologist, she told us how much she liked Brian. And then when she started working with him to manage his lymphoma, she said he had two goals. One, to go to his 50th medical reunion this upcoming September, and the other was to meet his great-grandchild in September. And as I said to him in the ICU, even though he was unconscious at the time, I think he is going to meet those goals, even if it's not the way he wanted. I believe Brian will be there, Sierra and Michael, when your child is born, and he will be a guardian angel and protector of him. And Nicholas, Grandpa was so proud of you, being so hardworking and being a great student and athlete. And most importantly, just a wonderful and kind human being. It was so sweet how Grandpa would watch sports with you, even though he wasn't very interested. He knew it was important to you. You spent so many nice moments together at our house for Sunday dinners or holidays and family celebrations, and also great times on holidays in Hawaii, Grand Beach, and of course the cottage in Invermere. And Grandpa was also so proud of you, Natasha. He was proud of what a great student you also are, and he really liked discussing your courses like anatomy, and enjoyed sharing scientific knowledge and medical knowledge that you guys shared with each other. And I think he really liked the fact that his lovely granddaughter is a talented and tough hockey player. You also got to spend a lot of great times together on holidays and at the cottage. He was always joking with you, and he was so proud of the beautiful young woman you've become. It's worth inserting here that Brian and Alice bought a cottage in Timber Ridge in Invermere in 1996 and subsequently built a new cottage in 2000 that they had for 20 years. One of their great gifts to the family was having that cottage. It was a great place for the family to congregate for summer holidays or Easter or New Year's. I remember bringing Nicholas to the cottage when he was just 1 month old, and he was slept by our bed in our bassinet, and Brooke and Sierra slept outside on the pull-out couch. And it would amuse me when I would get up in the night to go to the washroom to see Sierra's new position each time I came. Starfish, sideways, upside down, and Brooke's sliver of the bed getting smaller and smaller. And we also brought Natasha out to the cottage when she was only 1 month old as well. The grandkids grew up with that cottage, and it became synonymous with their grandparents. Brian and Alice hosted us royally, making a meal on the night we would arrive, and we would have Alice's delicious French toast for breakfast, always beginning with an incredible fruit platter with every fruit imaginable, cut to precision with Brian's surgical skills. And then when I think of Brian and Alice at the cottage, I think of them going on their daily walks. They would speed walk together, hand in hand. I remember them passing me and the kids on the path to the beach, making us look like we were standing still. And it was on these walks where they visited with their friends and made new friends. It's how they met their wonderful friends, Karen and Lori, who shared many dinners and laughs with them at the cottage. Brian and Alice were masters at creating great routines, starting with Brian getting up, I think it was at 5 a.m. in the morning to read, until Alice got up and joined him for their morning puzzles and games and coffee, and then their healthy breakfasts, then a walk, lattes, some work, followed by a healthy dinner, you see the theme, and evening TV shows with Alice's chamomile tea and an indulgence of 1 piece of dark chocolate. Their routines also included coming to Kevin and my house for Sunday dinners with my parents, Sandra and Volker. I usually would make roast beef, and whenever I put the food on the table, I was sure to hear one of Brian's favorite Brianisms. He'd take the platter of beef and say, "What's everyone else gonna have?" And whenever I would offer him a glass of wine, he would say, "Sure, why not? I can't dance." Or alternatively, "Does a chicken have lips?" Neither one did I really understand, but they soon became part of my personal lexicon. And at the end of the night, Brian was always sure to come and privately thank me for a wonderful dinner or family celebration and give me a kiss on the cheek. Brian and Alice also had a routine of going for a walk every Saturday with Karen, or if not, they would do something together. And many Friday nights, Kevin and I would go to their house for wine time or dinner. The common theme in Brian's life was being with Alice and being with family and friends. He was always finding a way to connect with people. When he and Alice went on their travels, Brian would make an effort to learn a few phrases in every language so he could connect with people in their native tongue. Brian and Alice often made deep connections with the people who worked at the restaurants and hotels they frequented. And I barely touched on Brian's career as a psychiatrist, probably because he could never really discuss his work because it was confidential. But I would often ask him various questions about life and human nature based on his professional and personal experience. Brian was very knowledgeable on so many subjects, which is a trait that Karen and Kevin also picked up. Maybe they have big brains too. And I know Brian made a big impact in his work because his patients loved him and appreciated him for what he did. Karen told me that a few people who knew she was Brian's daughter would come up to her and say that he had saved their lives. But no one was more impacted by Brian than Kevin and Karen and Alice, and most especially Alice. Brian and Alice created a beautiful, stable home for Kevin and Karen, and they had a very happy childhood. They both loved and continue to love Brian and are grateful to have had him as a father. At Brian's bedside before he passed, Karen said to Brian, "I know some New Age thought is that people choose their parents, And if that's true, I was really smart or really lucky because I could never ask for a better father. And I know that Kevin either consciously or unconsciously modeled himself after Brian in the way he cares for me and our family. It may look a little different than the way Brian did it, but it comes with the same amount of love and the same bad dad jokes. Kevin and Karen, I know that you know how much your dad loved you because he told you often, and it was evident in everything he did, and he was so proud of you. And I think he was very happy with the partners you chose as well. I think he was happy, Karen, that you found such a great partner in Todd. And Kevin, I'm certain he was delighted that you found me. I often think that the best tribute that you can give your parents is to live your life well. So I'm trying to do that, Mom and Dad. And Nicholas and Natasha, I expect no less. And Brooke and Sierra, you're doing an amazing job. And Kevin and Karen, Brian thought the world of you. You brought so much joy to him. His eyes lit up every time he saw you, and he looked forward to whenever you could get together, which was often. There is nothing left undone or unsaid between you, and that is a true gift. And finally, Alice, it's the hardest part here because you are almost like one person. I know losing Brian is the hardest thing you will ever experience in your life. Your and Brian's love story is amazing. I don't know any couple who is closer than the two of you. It's hard to comprehend that you were together for 60 years. I can't imagine how hard this will be, but we will all be there to help you fill that void in your life. They say it takes a village to raise a child, and I think it takes a family and a community to help get over a loss. And we have really experienced that since Brian passed. We have had so many friends and family reach out to comfort us, send flowers, bring food, offer assistance, and it has been appreciated. And when the shock wears off and this celebration of life is over, we will be here for each other. And we will be here for you, Alice. We won't be able to take Brian's place, but we will create new routines and find new joys, even when that seems impossible now. And it is so lovely that Sierra and Michael are having a baby. It's the cycle of life. New life is coming, life is continuing. And for my own spiritual belief, I don't think Brian is really gone. His body is gone, but his spirit lives on in all the people he touched. And I feel his presence so much. I think he's already been sending us some signs. When we were in the hospital, short moments after Brian passed, we were gathering his belongings, and we heard something, and Declan felt something on his foot. And it was Alice's promise ring that she had lost when Brian had gone into the hospital, and she'd been so upset about it. So I think that was a sign. And Sierra was looking to fix something in her room at Karen's house and went into a drawer that she would never normally go into, and she found her favorite picture of her and Brian. And Natasha told me that she had been thinking of Alice and thinking of some words of comfort, and the exact words came on in a song from her playlist. And when I was going for a run the other day, I was in the mudroom and the lights started flickering. And it took me a minute to think about it, and I said, Alice, come quick, I think Brian is giving us a sign. We watched it for a few minutes, and after a few minutes Alice said, okay, hon, we got the message. And it stopped. And it happened 3 more times. So either Brian's giving us some signs or we've got some serious electrical issues. But I think it's Brian, and I want to think it's Brian. So Brian, if you can hear me, I'm requesting that you continue to give us signs of your presence and love. They don't have to be spooky ghost signs, but just some things to make us think of you and warm our hearts. You will live on in our hearts and memories and in all the people you touched. And I believe we will be reunited again in some way. I recently started thinking that maybe the afterlife is what we imagine it to be. So I'm really glad that Brian revised his old idea of the afterlife being worm food. I think he was more open in recent years to the possibility that our spirit lives on. And the last thing that I said to Brian in the hospital when he was still conscious was to dream about Hawaii. And And when we were in the ICU and I was talking to him and sharing my ideas of the afterlife, I said, Brian, I think the afterlife for you will be a cosmic beach in Hawaii. I hope I'm right. And if that's true, save some beach chairs for us, but don't invite us to join you too soon. Brian, you lived an amazing life. We all love you, and we are happy you are free, even though we will miss your physical presence more than we can say. You loved so many people, and so many people loved you back, and we still do, just in a different way. Please watch over us. Thank you for everything that you gave us and continue to give us. We love you to infinity and beyond. Mahalo and aloha.
Thank you. We know that Brian had a great sense of humor. And you'd probably appreciate an old saying that says, you can't believe a man who speaks well of himself, but you can always believe others when they speak well of him. And so if you have a story that you'd like to share or a thought to describe what Brian meant to you, I invite you now to come to the podium and share your thoughts with us.
Chantal, that was beautiful. Thank you so much for all your kind words. And I always thought that Kevin made a great choice in you for so many reasons, but not least of all your ability to speak and write and articulate and do things that the rest of the family is terrified to do. But I would like to speak a little bit about who my dad was as a person from my perspective. I'll start with a little warning. I've never claimed to like public speaking or be any good at it, so I apologize in advance. The best public speaker I know, and someone who took great pleasure in public speaking, was my dad. I wish he could have helped me with this, but you'll just have to bear with me as I go it on my own. Fortunately, I had the pleasure of watching him deliver many excellent presentations over the years. Hopefully, some of his abilities rubbed off on me, although I can't promise. Happiness, joy, laughter, making jokes, enjoying the company of people, connecting with people. These all define who my dad was. This is what he was all about. My dad lit up a room with his smile and his cheerfulness. He made friends quickly and easily. My dad was constantly striking up conversations with complete strangers on our weekend walks or pretty much anywhere we went. If my dad had a shy bone anywhere in his body, he was completely unaware of it. But he also nurtured many strong friendships over multiple decades and long distances. Mom recently spoke to Dad's close friend of many years, Ben Garber from Chicago, who said that my dad was the nicest man he ever knew. I couldn't agree more, Ben. He loved to laugh and to make others laugh. He was always able to find the humor in everything and could bring a smile to even the most serious faces. I like to believe that my dad's positivity and good humor lives on in all of us, that a little bit of it rubbed off on everybody he came into contact with. This is one of the many ways that he made the world a better place. Commitment to family, hard work, generosity, selflessness. It wasn't easy to buy presents for my dad, not because he was picky or hard to please. On the contrary, he would love anything that was given to him. It's because all he ever really wanted was to spend time with his loved ones and to make others happy. It sounds absurd and maybe even cliche, but he would want all of us to be happy right now. My dad was generous with his time. He could always be counted on to show up to help with anything that we needed help with, from fixing anything that was broken, to assembling frustrating IKEA furniture, to moving house. I wish I could tell you how many times he helped me move, but it was so many that I've lost count. When my parents owned their place out in Invermere, we used to joke about how nice it was that they had that beautiful second home so that they could escape from work for the weekend to go out there and work all weekend. After the cottage was sold, my dad and his partner in crime, my mom, could be found working in the yards of their children every weekend. Music. After people, music was a second love of my dad's life. He loved many types of music, but especially 50s and 60s rock and roll. He managed to amass a huge collection of music on his iPod, always getting the one with the most storage. One time, his iPod took a dip into Lake Windermere. We are all pretty sure it was an accident. Kevin and I are probably much better versed in 50s and 60s rock and roll than most people our age, as we grew up listening to large volumes of it. Two of my dad's favorite artists were Roy Orbison and Buddy Holly. While listening to their music in order to make selections for today's service, spoiler alert, I was reminded why he loved them so much. Both had incredible voices and so much talent. I remember my dad telling me once how when Elvis was asked, "What does it feel like to be the greatest singer in the world?" Elvis replied, "I don't know, ask Roy Orbison." Life's work. People often talk about how my dad put himself through school while supporting a young family and what a hard worker he was. Very true, and although I still find this mind-boggling that he was able to do this, I now see that the greatest work in my dad's life was his love for all of the people in his life. His family, his friends, his patients, complete strangers. And yet it wasn't work at all. It was second nature to him. Recently, my dad said to me, "There's one thing I know for sure, and that is that the only thing that matters in this life is your relationships with people." My dad had an amazing ability to keep the mood light and cheerful, even in difficult times such as this. I am hoping that some of that ability rubbed off on me, as I know he wouldn't want us to be sad. He loved everyone here. Please remember him as one who cared deeply about his family and many friends. I miss you, Dad.
First, I just want to say thank you all so much for being here today, and for everyone that's watching on the live stream as well too. It really means a lot to me and the family here, so thank you. I just wanted to say a few words of thanks to my dad. We've heard today, and will continue to, at least I hope, to hear about what an amazing and great person that my father was. And all that was true. I realize I've taken some of that for granted over the years, but the recent trips down memory lane have as we prepared for this event, reinforced that and made that all abundantly clear. I guess I just wish I had more time and realized just how a great person Dad was and how lucky I was to have had him as my father. Sorry. So Dad, I wanted to thank you for providing me and showing me some of the important foundations in order to have a happy and successful life. Thank you for showing me the importance of commitment to family. People often say family first, but for you, that was more than a motto. You lived that all the time. Thank you for showing me the value of hard work and having a plan and getting your work done as soon as possible. It showed me that by following these examples, you would have more time for the important things in life, such as spending time with family and friends. And also, thank you for showing me the importance of generosity and selflessness in life. I've learned from you that for every little bit of kindness, appreciation, and generosity, that we give, we usually get back twice the value in return. And finally, I just want to thank you very much for being my dad and for being such a great example to me. I have found that whenever my life goes off the rails or becomes unusually difficult, it's usually because I failed to follow one of the examples that you've provided to us. So I just want to say thank you very much. For being my dad. And for being such an amazing person. I miss you dearly, but will continue to do my best to try and live by the examples that you impressed upon us. I love you, Dad.
Anyone else before we continue? There will be a reception after the service. So, you have one more? Oh, here we go.
Before I start, I'd just like to once again thank everyone for being here, and speaker, great eulogy mom, Auntie Karen and Dad, your great speeches. I'm sure Grandpa would be very delighted to hear them, and very great testament to him. And also like to share just some of my thoughts on what a great man he was. So, I mean, as we gather here today, I know we have heavy hearts as we are celebrating the life of an amazing man. And one of the tragic things, I guess, with life is, unfortunately, none of us can escape it alive. But in the time we have, there are so many amazing things that we can do. And I think Grandpa was an exemplary example of someone who lived life to the fullest and did amazing things. His academic and career accomplishments are among the best that you could have. But what I think really makes Grandpa special is his kind personality, humor, and genuine caring for others. From helping countless patients overcome their mental issues, to raising an amazing family, to being someone who always had a smile on their face and could crack a joke to lighten the mood, Grandpa was someone you wanted as part of your life. As I've gotten older, I've begun to realize just how incredible Grandpa's life story is. It is crazy to me to think that at my age, Grandma and Grandpa would have been getting prepared to welcome their first child. And on top of that, he went back to complete high school and go on to complete med school, all while raising a family, which just blows my mind. It could have been so easy for him and Grandma to have settled for a lesser life, but they built an incredible life, an incredible family, all while being incredible human beings. Even when he had to go through chemo and fight cancer, he still always had such a positive attitude and was concerned with other needs before his own. People like Grandpa are very special, and I feel very lucky and privileged that he was a part of my life. I mean, while it is very sad that he's no longer physically with us on this planet, he will forever be entrenched in this family. He's an example of what it is to be a hardworking, successful, and caring person, traits that I hope to emulate in my own life. One of the few things that I believe Grandpa was wrong about, as you had alluded to earlier in the eulogy, Mom, was saying that you become worm food after death. So Grandpa, if you're listening, you don't have to worry about becoming worm food. And I know your spirit will forever be entrenched with our family, and I'm sure it is here in this moment. And just love to say, I love you, Grandpa.
One more? Here we go.
Okay, so this is for Grandpa. My Grandpa Brian was one of the most cheerful and positive people I've had the pleasure of having in my life. He would never fail to crack a joke and share his laughter and happiness to anyone around him. Even towards the end, where he wasn't feeling well, he wouldn't let that bring him down. All he cared about was spending time with his family, and he would never forget to mention how grateful he was to be able to see everyone. He stayed positive and persevered through so many obstacles and showed me what it was like to be strong. He taught me so many lessons throughout my life, especially how even in the worst situations, there's always a way to look at it from a better perspective. He inspired me in so many ways, always sharing stories from his past, showing me that there's so much to life and so much you can accomplish. He showed me what it looks like to be truly loved by someone, not only through his love for me and my family, but especially how much he loved my grandma. He definitely set a very high standard on what it should look like to treat the people you love. I will miss and cherish his old repeated jokes, like how anytime he would food would show up on the dinner table, he would never forget to say his iconic line, "What's everyone else going to have?" which is obviously repeated because Mom already talked about it. He was an amazing grandpa, and I will miss having him in my life so much and being there for all those special occasions. He brought so much joy to everyone in the family and could always lighten the mood. He could sense times where I was sad or stressed or upset, and would make sure to bring laughter to my face in the times where I really needed it. I will never forget him or the joy he brought into my life. He had a huge impact on me growing up and played a big role in the person I am today. I loved him with all my heart, and I already miss him so much.
Thanks for all the speakers. It's great. I learned a lot. Thank you. It's been said that a song can take you back instantly to a moment or a place or even a person. No matter what else has changed in you or in the world, that one song stays the same, just like that one moment. One of Brian's favorite places was the islands of Hawaii, which he had opportunity to visit 44 times. Most times he traveled only with his spouse Alice, and other times with his son and daughter and their families. Let's spend a moment in quiet reflection now as we remember your special times with Brian, and as we listen to the Hawaiian singer Israel Kamakaole sing "Somewhere Over the Rainbow."
passing by, see friends shaking and saying, how do you do? They really think I love you. I hear babies cry and I watch them go. They'll learn much more than we'll know, and I think to myself, what a wonderful world. Someday I wish upon a star, wake up with clouds of far behind me, where trouble builds like a lemon drop, high above the chimney top. That's where you'll find me, oh, somewhere over the rainbow, way up high. The dream that you didn't write, oh, why can't
I'm sure most of us have at some time or another taken notice of the sun as it rises in the morning or sets in the evening. Or perhaps like Brian, you've had the privilege of sitting on a tropical beach as the sun slowly slips into the sea. Hawaii was one of Brian's favorite places. We could probably imagine him sitting on Waikiki Beach or in a beachfront restaurant, enjoying a big juicy steak or some fresh mahi-mahi and a fine bottle of wine, while watching the sun, the red glow of the sun as it is swallowed up by the dark ocean. We find that as the sun rises and later retreats, it appears to grow in size, being as large as when it meets the horizon. It is no exaggeration to say that at these times the sun appears twice its normal size. And just as sunrise and sunset are very special moments in the day, so birth and death are very special moments in the life of a human being. At these moments, we realize that each person is absolutely unique. At birth, something comes into being that never was before. At death, something passes away that will never be again. People also seem larger to us at these two moments. At these two moments, we are given a glimpse of the true worth and the benefits they bestow on us. At birth and death, we regard them not only as precious, but sacred as well. Heaven and earth are joined together. We feel we are in the presence of mystery. Each person is a mystery. Each person is a gift from God. I would liken Brian's passing to a sunset, a gentle and serene setting, a completion of his life's day. Brian will forever be a part of who you are as you take his examples and live them in your own lives. May you always remember what you have learned from him and what you have shared. May you remember what you admired about him, what most endeared him to you, and hold on to it, and incorporate that quality, that gift into your own lives. The memories of Brian be like the soft light above the horizon at sunset, and may you look to that light in the days and the years to come and find peace. Let's spend a moment now to watch a slide presentation, rekindling our memories of Brian and celebrating his life.
closer, going faster than a roller coaster. Love like yours will surely come my way. Hey, hey, hey. Every day it's a getting faster. Everyone said go ahead and ask her. Love like yours will surely come my way. Hey, hey, hey. Every day seems a little longer. Every way love's a little stronger. Come what may, do you ever long for true love from me? Every day it's a getting closer, going faster than a roller coaster. Love like yours will surely come my way. Hey, hey, hey. Every day seems a little longer. Every way love's a little stronger. Come what may, do you ever long for true love from me? Every day it's a getting closer, going faster than a roller coaster. Love like yours will surely come my way. Hey, hey, hey. Love like yours will surely come my way.
Now you can dance, every dance with the guy who gives you the eye. Let him hold you tight. You can smile, every smile for the man who held your hand beneath the pale moonlight. But don't forget who's taking you home and in whose arms you're gonna be. So darling, save the last dance for me. Oh, I know that the music's fine, like sparkling wine. Go and have your fun, laugh and sing. But while we're apart, don't give your heart to anyone. And don't forget who's taking you home and in whose arms you're gonna be. So darling, save the last dance for me. Baby, don't you know I love you so? Can't you feel it when we touch? I will never, never let you go. I love you oh so much. You can dance, go and carry on till the night is gone and it's time to go. If he asks if you're all alone, can he walk you home? You must tell him no. 'Cause don't forget who's taking you home and in whose arms you're gonna be. Save the last dance for me. Oh, I know that the music's fine, like sparkling wine. Go and have your fun, laugh and sing. But while we're apart, don't give your heart to anyone. And don't forget who's taking you home and in whose arms you're gonna be. So darling, save the last dance for me. So don't forget who's taking you home or in whose arms you're gonna be. So darling, save the last dance for me.
Every time I look into your loving eyes, I see love that money just can't buy. One look from you, I drift away. I pray that you are here to stay. Anything you want, you got it. Anything you need, you got it. Anything at all, you got it, baby. Every time I hold you, I begin to understand. Everything about you tells me I'm your man. I live my life to be with you. No one can do the thing you do. Anything you want, you got it. Anything you need, you got it. Anything at all, you got it, baby. Anything you want, you got it. Anything you need, you got it. Anything at all. I'm glad to give my love to you. I know you feel the way I do. Anything you want, you got it. Anything you need, you got it. Anything at all, you got it, baby. Anything you want, you got it. Anything you need, you got it. Anything at all, you got it, baby. Anything at all, you got it, baby. You got it.
With him. It is entitled Some Days Never Die. Some days never die, those holidays that took us far away, where beaches are wild and windy and the cry of the seagull is the music of longing, where we played under giant skies. Some days never die, these holidays when our family shared laughter, accepted everything, beauty, wind, rain, and sun, and racing clouds like horses and eagles whipped across the sky. Some days never die, cold moments of warm memory, when we picked driftwood, ran through sands of time and tide, sharing evenings in the firelight, celebrating friendship and love. Some days never die. In closing, I'd like to leave with you this thought as expressed by a character from Charles Schultz's Charlie Brown. In one episode, Charlie and Snoopy are having a discussion, and Charlie says to Snoopy, "We only live once, Snoopy." To which Snoopy replied, "Wrong. We only die once, we live every day." I believe that describes Brian in one sentence. Brian lived his life one day at a time, and he lived every single day. He lived his life to the full and left his family with many fond memories that will last their lifetimes. Brian, we delight in the friendship we shared. We cherish the memories of your words, your deeds, and your character. We cherish your friendship. And most of all, we cherish your love. Now with love, we leave you in peace. And with respect, we bid you farewell. Until we meet again, or as it is said in Hawaiian, a hui ho keko. The family would like to send out a special thank you to the doctors, nurses of the ICU at Foothills Hospital. They express their gratitude and want these ones to know that the professionalism and passion for those in their care does not go unnoticed. It is very much appreciated. This now completes our service for Brian. Following our dismissal, the family will make their way to do a short service of committal. Everyone else is invited to go into the reception room where you're encouraged to share your memories of Brian with one another. Thank you for being here today, for being part of this journey of farewell, of celebration, and of remembrance. May you find comfort and strength in the days to come as you remember Brian. Go in peace.
Please stand. Supper family.